Search engine optimization sounds like a very, very confusing topic. And it's often made deliberately so by people who would like to sell you lots of stuff. Before you buy lots of stuff, let's talk a little bit about the basics and understand the basics of what it really is, so you can make more informed decisions. The purpose of search engines, the way Google makes money, and Yahoo and Bing make money, is to serve up ads, to give people the information they want. So when you type in Los Angeles attorney, Google wants to give you, historically, the best possible results for Los Angeles attorney. When search engines first started out, the question was, well, okay, how does Google decide which company comes up in the top slot? We know that being in the #1 spot on Google, it generally gets you about 80% of the traffic, and then it starts to fall rapidly. Second spot, 60 to 70, third spot. Well, there are a lot of different kinds of strategies and business principles. There are literally, last time I checked, something like 500,000 business books published in the last several years on how to market, how to do good strategy, how to use technology effectively. A lot of these books, if you go contrast to going to meetings, which are time intensive, you can only see a few people at any particular meeting. On social media, you can engage hundreds of people very, very quickly. Now, you of course do lack the personal connection that you get in person, but that may not be a bad thing. If you're not a very attractive, interesting social person, maybe it's better that you do engage them through social media, where you can demonstrate that you are an attractive, interesting person, a real person, and cool in a lot of other ways that you wouldn't be able to demonstrate in a business networking session, for example. The first principle then is to be where your customers are, and that's online. The second is to give them what they want, and usually very quickly. Immediately when they hit the site, doesn't matter what page they're on, they need to know that you are about giving them what they want. On shopping cart websites, for example, that means providing them the information very, very quickly, so they don't have to dig through lots of pages to get what they want. Many times business owners will find me and they'll ask for help with their internet marketing. A lot of times they want help with SEO, or say they've heard this thing about social media marketing and they're not really sure what it is. And so they say, well, we want to do this. We want to start blogging. What about Facebook? How do we use that? And within about half an hour after listening to them talk, I always have to stop them. And I usually have to say, wait a minute. If you do those things out of order, if you're not ready to do those things, then all the time and money you spend in those areas will be wasted, or at least almost all of it, and you'll generally get very, very frustrated. When I was early in my career, and people would come and ask for that kind of thing, I would do it. I would do anything that they wanted. If they wanted a quick website thrown up, I would throw it up. If they wanted to start blogging or do SEO, I would just start doing it. And I learned real quickly that was a mistake, because when those things were out of order, or when they weren't done in the context of an overall plan, an overall comprehensive plan that was implemented step by step, they wouldn't have the kind of result that they really wanted. Now, I could fake it. A lot of people in the industry, fake it. They say, okay, here's what we're... Sure, what's the first topic, Bob, so I can write it down here?
I'll do private banking.
Private banking? Okay, let's talk private banking.
I'm just going to let it go.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready.
And you could, how can Leah check on it from time to time? Just walk behind you?
I can slip like that.
See, like that?
Yeah,
Perfect.
nice. Yeah, great.
Okay, all right, good.
Really nice.
Hey, why don't you stand on the other side so you can come in
Yeah,
easier?
Yeah, you can step
You
in.
can
and
try
stuff.
my first.
Just whichever
I'll put it on.
you're going to need to be on most is what's...
You can ask Cody, he's got another way to tie it that actually is interesting.
Over here. She can sit over here.
If you've received a grand jury subpoena or know someone who has received a grand jury subpoena, it is important that you know your rights throughout the grand jury process. These include the rights to challenge a grand jury subpoena by moving to quash it in federal court, These include the rights to force the government to go through the process of trying to show any contempt, and you explaining to the court why it is you're not in contempt before you produce information that you're not lawfully obligated to produce. And it includes your right at the time of the grand jury to either obtain a delay if you need time in order to gather evidence and information to make sure your testimony is correct and truthful, but also your right to assert the privilege or any privilege that may apply before the grand jury when you're being questioned. In fact, it goes a step further. If you want your lawyer outside the room, you're entitled to have your lawyer outside that grand jury room. Now, it can sound scary and intimidating. You receive a subpoena that drags you in front of 23 people whom you don't know in some room in a government building and hear the words grand jury. Well, remember, some grand juries are really just investigative grand juries. These are grand juries that are not out to indict anybody. They are simply a tool by which the IRS agent or the criminal investigation agent or the prosecutor is simply gathering information. They're not there to judge. The other grand jurors are not there to judge you, not even there to judge whomever's under investigation. Frequently, they're just in the investigation stage of the case. If it's an indictment grand jury, then they may want testimony from you. In either case, when you're presenting testimony, you have a right and an obligation to assert any privilege that may apply. This includes, if a grand jury is investigating anybody and you've been subpoenaed, then you should assert your Fifth Amendment rights. You may think I did nothing wrong. Lots of people who were wrongfully prosecuted thought exactly that when they went into the grand jury room. People who know they've done something wrong often know how to assert their rights. They're not the people who get prosecuted frequently. It's those who did not know how to assert their rights because they thought they did nothing wrong that end up in trouble because of the way the government later tries to characterize it or portray it, and because the person did not assert their rights when they had the time and opportunity to do so. So it is important that your first thing you can assert before a grand jury is your Fifth Amendment right, not to produce any document that may incriminate you, not to testify in any way, shape, or form that may incriminate you. That can cover a very broad category of documents and information, including every single question asked. If you have any doubts about whether you're supposed to assert the Fifth Amendment privilege, you're entitled to have an attorney present right outside the grand jury room. And when the grand juror or somebody for the government or an IRS agent asks you a question inside the grand jury room, you are entitled to walk outside that grand jury room and consult with your lawyer before you answer it, whenever it's the case that you have any doubts or any questions or any hesitation about whether it's legally proper for you to answer that question. That is one of the procedural protections you can employ throughout the process. There are other privileges that may apply that you might not initially think about, whether it's someone else being subpoenaed or whether it's you. This includes the marital privilege. This is a privilege that is protected between spouses in all communications they make that relate to the relationship. That can be a very broad scope of communications that take place, and either person in the relationship can frequently assert the privilege. So this means that even if you feel comfortable talking about it, if your spouse does not, the spouse has rights to assert that privilege before you present any testimony before the grand jury. There are other forms of privilege that may apply. Privileges are often based on the state that you're in. So different privileges apply in different states. Sometimes there's a journalist privilege that may apply. There can be a physician privilege that can apply. There can be a psychologist privilege that may apply. There can be a petitioner privilege between a pastor and a person that was a parishioner in their church that may apply. There may be a whole host of privileges that may apply depending on the circumstances, including a joint defense privilege or a corporate law privilege, depending on your particular circumstances. It is important that each of these privileges are asserted, because if you don't assert them and you were supposed to on behalf of someone else, then you could be in trouble for saying something you were not lawfully entitled to say. There is, of course, at all times, the attorney-client privilege. This privilege attaches and applies to a broad range of communications between you and any tax lawyer to which you may have been party because somebody else was there as well. So it is important to make sure the privilege is asserted throughout. You're entitled to assert that privilege throughout, and that is an important protection in the grand jury process.
Perfect.
My name is Steve Keller. I was the founder of Kelco. Take three.
Take three. Just keep on going.
My name is Steve Keller. I'm the founder of a company called Kelco. In 1992, Kelco was one of the founding companies to enter into and create the vehicle and life settlement industry. Between 92 and 2000, Kelco amassed some 100 employees in Lexington, Kentucky. We dealt in every state in the U.S. and was the first North American company to have a presence in Europe. The company was a young, eclectic group, much like